Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy.
So today is Earle Leonard Nelson is who we're talking about, also known as the Gorilla Killer or the Dark Strangler. Earle would start in San Francisco and head up the coast to Seattle, leaving victims in his wake. He was dubbed the Gorilla Man by papers. His victims were mainly middle-aged or elderly ladies who had places listed in the paper for rooms to let.
Hey, do you have any triggers?
That's what I'm getting to. I'm just giving the summary.
All right.
Earle
I know how
often
you like to skip them triggers and just surprise me with stories.
Now, Earle often studied his worn Bible, using it to keep his victims at ease and off guard around him. Once he got a woman alone, who would and then he would turn into the monster who is. He would use that facade to make people feel safe and secure, and that they're with a nice person, and then would go all crazy man, typically choking the women to death, then rape their corpses, and then hide the bodies in strange places.
So, see, I feel like before you do your summary, you should be saying my trigger warnings involve necrophilia.
This is practically the trigger warnings and just telling you what we're discussing and in a brief gist of it. Now, one of the women's he puts in a trunk in the attic. One he hides in a furnace in the basement. One he shoves under the bed, and her husband finds her when he kneels down to say his prayers.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, that's what we're about to dig into. But just so you know, he moves around. He operates under aliases. So his murdering spree goes on for 18 months, and he kills between 22 and 25 women.
Good Lord.
It's what we're discussing. Some necrophilia.
Because you like them cases. You like the weird ones.
It's about to get real weird. So let's talk about Earle from the beginning.
Wait. Can I just point out that when you say it's going to get weird, I got a brace for impact because
you do, because I can tell you when I was reading this, I don't know how I'd never heard of this case before. It's so weird.
I'm kind of scared.
You should be, because I laughed at plenty of this because it's like you'll see, I guess. So Earle was born May 12th, 1897 to James Farrell and Fannie Nelson in San Francisco, California. Now, Earle's parents both will die of syphilis before he turns 2. Syphilis, by the way, that the dad gave the mom. So, interesting family situation.
I don't know a whole lot about syphilis, I'm not going to lie, but I do remember watching The Tudors, and like the king gets syphilis and it makes him kind of crazy, right? Isn't that what's so? Yikes.
Well, so since both of his parents die before he's 2, he's left to be raised by his heavily religious grandparents on his mother's side, Lars and Mary Nelson, who were raising 5 children at the time.
Were they their kids?
Yes, it says 5 of their own children at the time.
Do you know how many kids they had in total? Because if they had a daughter that was grown and married, but then again, I guess grown.
She was not married. She was not married because it was James Farrell and Fannie Nelson. I don't know the age of his parents, so it could have been they were 16. Now, at 7 years old, Earle is expelled from school. He would talk to people that no one could see, and he would recite scripture at the top of his lungs, so that's partially the reason he's kicked out of school. But he'd particularly like to harp on the beast out of the Bible. He was also a loner who had a short temper that once he got angry, he would turn violent. So the school just went, we've had enough of this 7-year-old. You can take him back.
7?
7.
Good Lord.
Now, when he turns 9, he nearly dies of diphtheria, but he does recover from that. Now, from then on, Earle would remain a withdrawn child who feared anything that might be regarded as unholy, which I feel like that's partially due to his heavily religious grandparents raising him. So it's just like serious Bible baiting going on.
Yeah.
Now, as a preteen, Earle refused to eat food prepared for him, at the way it was prepared. Instead, he'd throw scraps of food onto a plate, mix it with olive oil, and slurp it down.
Wait, that's disgusting. He
So
did
he
what?
so he refused to use silverware that was provided to him, and he would mix whatever scraps or on everybody else's plate. He would mix all of that and drink it down with olive oil, like to make it soupy.
So he is feral, like a feral cat. The name is fitting.
Well,
That's
so
disgusting. That's disgusting. I'm sorry. And for those out there that choose to drink their foods, I hope it's not with olive oil.
well, it seems like it would give him some serious diarrhea. But the people who would be witness to this would say that he also ate way more than a child his age should. No, that was mainly according to his aunt. The other children in the home would taunt him and call him an animal and would remain distant. So, like, nobody wanted to hang out with him. He was weird. He had strange eating habits. And then his personality would swing from one end to the other of whether he was angry and violent or ignoring everybody. He was all over the place. Now, when
Does he
Earle
have syphilis?
I wouldn't even be surprised if there's some like close gene pool issues going on here that I I don't know what's wrong with Earle, but something's wrong with Earle. But when Earle would leave for school, that he'd be sent out in clean clothes, but he would come home in a completely different outfit, closer to rags, and they would be filthy because he would trade them with other kids at school. And because he never liked being clean, so he would
What?
always trade his stuff. So he'd never come home in whatever they bought for him or provided for him. He hated being clean. Now, by the
Um,
time, yeah, now when Earl turns 10, he uncharacteristically begins showing off on a bicycle he had inherited from his uncle. Now, he starts racing down the street in front of one of the streetcars. When the trolley clips the back end of his bike, it knocks him to the ground and drags him several feet, causing a horrific head wound. He's in and out of conscious for the next week.
goodness. There's your head injury.
I know. I was like, what the fuck? He's already drinking olive oil lunches.
That's disgusting. You think he
Now,
shit himself?
I feel like everyone who saw it did.
I feel like that just greased his wheels.
That's probably why he made it out. He just slipped out from under the tire because he was all lubed up.
That's disgusting.
Now, Earl would have headaches, memory loss, and develop a morbid disposition after this injury.
No
But
shit. He's probably got himself a speed bump, a divot, and a crack and crevice of all kinds of
and a limp.
like you name it, he's got it.
He can no longer turn left. But
He can only turn left. He's just walking around in a circle.
But what I thought was funny is they would say he returned to normal after about 2 weeks, and I was like, he wasn't normal to start out with.
He returned to his level of normal, I guess.
Yeah, he went back
which
to
is just
drinking his
fucking weird.
supper.
They were like, he's not right in the head right now. He's eating solid foods.
Yeah. By the time Earl was 14, both his grandparents had passed away, forcing him to move in with his Aunt Lillian, who was only 10 years older than Earl.
Gosh.
Now, she was genuinely fond of him and thought that it was important for her to take care of family, no matter what Earl's weird eccentricities were, that she thought that, if family's family, happens to be who he is. And by the way, I'll point out that in his entire life, it seems to be his Aunt Lillian is the only person who thinks like that.
She really wanted to care for him.
Yeah, which is kind of
good for her.
Yeah,
She
I
tried.
don't know I don't
He's
know if that
broken.
makes her crazier or not. Well, maybe it's because she feels bad that both his
He's
parents
lost
keeled over.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, so she wanted to be the person who was there for him.
She had that wants to fix him mentality. You know how they say women try to fix men? I
Yeah,
realize it's her nephew, but
yeah. Now, by this point, Earl is officially done with attending school and would pass through several menial jobs, rarely staying at one longer than a few weeks. Now, typically, he would like wander off of job sites and just not return. And he
like
wouldn't,
just
yeah, he'd
walk
just
away.
wander off and never go back to that job. But he'd also not complete tasks asked of him. So sometimes he'd just get fired. But it's around this time that Earl begins obsessively changing his clothes, still
To clean ones or
preferring,
dirty?
yeah, no, still preferring rags over new clothes, but almost like a compulsive disorder
Some OCD maybe?
of like opposite of where you have to be dirty.
Well, I meant compulsively
Yeah,
changing.
no, well, that's where it's just like, like
I
if they
don't know
say
about the dirtiness. That's just
weird.
maybe, maybe that was his act of rebelling against his super religious grandparents, and perhaps they were doing the whole your parents weren't holy, and that's why they died, and that was his way of rebelling was by being dirty and wearing dirty. Like, does that make sense? Do you get what I mean?
I don't know because he
This,
never grows out of it.
well, but because they instilled those thoughts in his head, and that was his act of rebellion, I don't see him
I don't know.
became his way. I don't know.
He's not a deep thinker. Just gonna tell you that.
Oh, okay.
Now, Earl would not interact with anyone outside of the family, especially with other children his age. Um, he was just generally awkward. When Lillian would have female visitors, instead of talking to them, Earl would lift heavy objects with his teeth or walk on his hands. Now, some of those heavy objects, by the way, were chairs.
No dining room table.
I don't know. You gotta. I hope they had a dental insurance.
I highly doubt it.
Or walk into the room on his hands to impress them.
Wait, was he trying out for the circus?
When I read that, I was like, he what? Like, could you see going over to a friend's house and just sitting there and then in walks on their hands, not saying anything to you, just walks in and back out? I'd be like, like
Did he walk in doing like a handstand, or was it like a back bend? Like what was this walking
it
in on his
says
hand?
he walked on his hands, Andrea. I wasn't there, but lifting heavy objects with his teeth.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't. It's weird.
I don't even understand that one.
I don't either, but I laughed. Now he is not a tall man. He's about 5'5", but he's described as having large hands and feet, which again makes me think that like developmentally there's something off, and that could be why his brains seem a little scrambled also. But part of the reason why they end up nicknaming him the Gorilla Man is because he's so disproportionate.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say because he's like pounding on his chest and jumping around like a crazy
He,
person.
he probably does.
Interesting. Okay.
So by 15, Earl would disappear for days at a time on drinking binges. He would spend whatever money he'd earned from his odd jobs, and then whatever money he didn't turn over to pay for his room or board. But he would just disappear and just drink for days. Now, when he would return home, he'd be all battered and bruised as if he'd been in a fight. He'd also get money from just whatever petty crimes.
He was a
But
prostitute.
well, probably. Now, or he did some weird shit and somebody whooped his ass because he was doing weird things. Now, during one of his walks around at night, he discovers the red light district of San Francisco and begins spending a lot of time there. This is also where he loses his virginity and his favorite spot to drink excessively. but he is a 15-year-old boy, so.
Did he lose his virginity to a girl or a boy?
Andrea, I wasn't there.
You're the one reporting.
And I'm just saying, this is what people said. Now, at this point, Lillian had 2 children of her own, so she's really not digging the whole drinking bitch thing coming home. He's not something she wants around her kids. But she feels like torn because he's family, but she's starting to be fearful of Earle. So she gives up on disciplining Earle and kind of waffles back and forth between wanting to care for him and wanting him to move out. So she just starts praying for a solution. Now, I don't know what he says, but Earle begins saying dirty things to his Aunt Lillian and also to her daughter, which I don't know how old the daughter is, but I'm going to say she's probably like 5 or 6.
Time to go, buddy.
Which naturally makes Lillian uncomfortable. And then she catches peeking in on her while she's getting dressed. So she gives
the
her
little girl or her?
No, her. So she gives Earle money to go sleep somewhere else, anywhere else. Now, when Earle would walk around, I don't know if this is when he was drunk or not, but when he would walk around, he'd have his face up towards the sky because he would say that heaven is looking down on him. He'd also carry his worn Bible everywhere he went, and he would refuse to read anything else. Which part of me wants to know, did he carry that Bible to the red light district? Because I'm fairly sure there's some criteria in there that don't match with how he's living.
I don't know what the red light district is.
What?
What's the red light district?
It's where prostitutes are, Andrea.
I don't know.
How do you not know what the red light district is?
I'm not a prostitute.
Not that I've been there. Fuck you, Andrea. Neither am I.
But you know. I don't know.
Now you do.
Thanks for
educating
me.
The last person to know. But
I don't think I am.
How did you let me prattle on that long and you didn't know what the hell the red light district was? Did you think it was like Kmart's blue light special?
Maybe. I didn't know. I figured you might get into more detail.
Okay.
I figured maybe they just had lots of red lights.
You're an idiot. There was heavy traffic. He liked to wander in and out, see if he'd get clipped by yet another trolley.
The original Frogger game.
Now, as a young man, Earle was described as a daydreamer and a compulsive masturbator. Which, by the way, I had to pause because what the fuck, Andrea? I'm not exactly sure how much masturbating a teenage boy has to do in order to be described as a compulsive masturbator. Or what other of your traits fall so short that that's the only thing people can think of when they go to describe you. Guess it's the only thing that's stuck up.
That's funny. I see what you did there.
But seriously, like...
Maybe he was just jerking it off in public and they were just like, oh, he's at it again.
Which hand did he have his Bible in? Did he just shove it under his armpit?
I doubt he was a two-fister.
I would doubt it too. He had big hands.
Oh, gosh.
Now, on July 28th, 1950, he's now 18. He's arrested for robbery when he breaks into a cabin that he had thought was abandoned, but it wasn't, and he's sentenced to 2 years in San Quentin. Now, mind you, he was doing all that shit to pay for his drinking binges, and so he didn't have to go to work. So he just happened to break into a cabin that was not vacant.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 years go by. When he gets out, he's far from rehabilitated. But at this point, the U.S. is being drawn into a war in Europe, and patriotism is surging. So that draws Earle to enlist into the military and his hope to go to battle.
He wanted to?
Well, yeah, because people wanted to, like, again, patriotism was high, go fight for freedom, free the oppressed, that whole thing. So he enlists.
I get other people, but he seems to be a lazy sack of dog poo who wants to just drink and apparently masturbate to the Bible. So forgive me for being shocked.
I didn't say he masturbated to the Bible.
You don't know.
he would read nothing else.
Oh,
And his other pastime when he wasn't reading the Bible, he was spanking it or drinking binges. Those were his three things to do. Or
you don't
slurp.
know. He could have been trying to multitask. He's probably sipping down some of his devil's juice while reading the Bible and spanking his monkey. Hello, gorilla.
Okay. Well, in 1917, Earle enlists into the U.S. Army as Earle Farrell. And
Because
now,
he's feral.
well, that's his dad's name or his last name.
No,
Now,
he acts like a feral animal.
he was sent to jail as Earle Nelson, so the U.S. Army is not aware of his just recently left jail.
Wait. At that point, they hadn't made it mandatory because of your other case that you did.
True.
He was allowed to join with his criminal background. I think maybe he just wanted a fresh start, or
Well,
maybe he decided to hone in on that being
I
feral.
think it's possible since he goes under a number of different names that maybe he's schizophrenic. Like maybe these are all legitimate people to him. I don't know. But just so you know, they are not asking any questions because they don't know he's a different or the same person. But anyway, it doesn't take much time for Earle to realize he wasn't cut out for the army.
No shit.
When he's ordered to stand guard one cold night, he decides to cut out and he goes AWOL.
That's because he learned he couldn't hold his gun, hold his Bible, and spank his monkey.
It was too cold of a night. He couldn't. There was shrinkage. And he's got big hands, so it created a problem.
He's holding it with his index finger and his thumb.
Why would there be squeaking? He's not clean. Now, this is like the start of like his weirdness.
Start?
like weirder. He decides
we surpassed weird at 7, okay?
So he decides to head to Utah thinking he might like being a Mormon. But he gets there and he finds out that doesn't suit him either. So he creates another alias and decides he's going to try the Navy, and he ends up getting a job as a cook in San Francisco.
Oh my gosh. Hold on. So he leaves one branch of the military.
The army.
Decides to tries on a different religion for size, like it's a freaking pair of pants. And then he's like, nah, I don't like these. I'm going to join the military again. Just go with a different branch. That doesn't even make sense.
Well, he heads to San Francisco, but he does little else than lie on his cot and rant about the great beast of Revelations. It's about a month, and then he deserts again because turns out he doesn't like the Navy.
No shit. Who could have predicted that?
Now, after 2 months, he decides he's going to give the military another crack, but he's going to try.
Third time's the charm.
I guess. Yeah, he's going to try as...
Go on, let me know.
He's going to try as a medical corpsman.
He can't masturbate while doing that either.
Well, he tried as a cook, but turns out they wouldn't let him have the special sauce.
It doesn't help with boo-boos either.
Now, after this time, he begins to around this time, he begins to exhibit signs of mental illness that would later turn to violence.
Okay, I feel like there has been lots of mental illness that has been exhibited.
Now, yeah, I know. Well, that's where when I was just like, they just consider just now in his adult life a sign of mental illness. I feel like there were several indicators.
Just a few.
Now, surprise, surprise, he would desert his military career again, citing he had a burning about his anus that bothered him.
What? Oh.
When I read it, Andrea, I was so excited to throw that one out for you.
You have some serious issues. You know that? You read that and you're like, yep, this is the case I am doing. You've got it. Burning anus. Here we come. Party over here.
I'm not gonna lie.
How did he cite that as his reason for leaving? And they accepted it?
No, it's just like later when they're talking to him and they're just trying to figure out, why he decided
Why'd you
to
leave the
leave.
military again?
The third time.
Third time was not a charm.
I had
Third
a
time
burn.
left your asshole. Okay.
I don't know. But when I read it, I was like, how did I miss the connection? I mean, I can understand or sympathize a burning anus, but
you can sympathize with a burning anus. I don't want details on that. I don't want to know. Go see a doctor, Claire. Do not sympathize with that. Your anus should not be burning.
I just don't understand the connection, rather.
Maybe he ate some spicy food.
Maybe, but it's just like,
maybe he's just like,
he decided the military wasn't cut out for him because his anus is on fire. I was like, what?
That was random.
As was the burning anus. I'd also blow my nose because you made me laugh so hard that I cried.
So I have a question.
Yes. And I did not pick it because of the burning anus. I stumbled upon.
I don't believe you.
I stumbled upon that one after Thanksgiving. It was like that Friday when I was working on my computer and I was reading an article and I stumbled on that one and I was like, what the fuck? I wanted to text you, but I was like, no.
This is the case that when we were talking the other day, when you said you were finishing it up for us to record, that you were like, I got a little juicy nugget of information and I'm not going to tell you any kind of hints. That's what it was, wasn't it? Burning anus. Well, that's what you chose to hold back on.
I read it, and I couldn't exactly tell Dave because we had guests, but I looked up from the computer and I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, sorry, I won't be making it into work today. My anus is on fire. You can only respond to that with a lot of blinking.
You know what? Hold up. I got it figured out. I figured it out.
Your anus is burning?
Fuck you. No, my anus is fine. I bet the military did not have large quantities of extra virgin olive oil for him to mix his food with. So he was having some solid shits and he was like, that does not feel good. That does not feel good. Probably. And since all the different branches served solid foods, he was just like, I can't do this no more.
I just don't get why he enlisted 3 times.
It just doesn't work out for me. That should have been his response. I didn't like the rules, not my burning anus.
Well, in 1918, a naval psychiatrist declares him in a constitutional psychotic state.
No shit.
Now, the judge sends him to Napa State Mental Hospital after determining he's insane.
Was it the picking up of the chairs? Tell me that in court he bent down and started lifting tables up with his teeth. Or just started beating it under the table. He was just like...
Probably. Now, the doctors at the hospital believed Earle to be incurably insane and recommended he be institutionalized for life. Now, his blood test showed evidence of gonorrhea and syphilis, which Earle would say he contracted when he was 16.
I'm going to say he contracted it at birth.
I don't know if that's possible, but I wouldn't.
I'm going to say that it. I don't see why it wouldn't, and that would explain why he's mentally screwy, since syphilis messes. Yeah, well, it might explain why he was developmentally behind, and why his brain was just not right. Because I don't know. Again, I don't know anything about syphilis, and my computer's over there charging. I asked you if I was going to need it, but isn't that the one that makes people go crazy if it gets up and so maybe that's what's wrong with him.
But the problem is that it'll also kill you. So I feel like if he had it when he was born, he wouldn't have made it that long without keeling over. Because keep in mind, both his parents die of syphilis.
I understand that, but
I don't feel like he'd make it to 18 if he was born with syphilis. I think he would die as an infant, or just because, immune system wise. And also bear in mind, now that you know what the red light district is, he's sleeping around with dirty people. So He could have
Mm,
contracted it a number of different ways, and probably from 2 different people with the gonorrhea and the syphilis.
he's a dirty man. Wait a minute. If he gets institutionalized for life, how does he rape people?
Andrew, you're getting ahead of the story there.
You're
Now,
talking too slow.
why
You're sitting here scarring my
you're
brain with burning
interrupting.
anus.
Now, Earle escapes 3 times while committed and would be dubbed Houdini by the other patients, and soon the staff just get tired of going and getting him.
Wait.
He's discharged after a year of this. While still an escapee, they just don't bother to track him down. They just discharge him from the military and write down in his record that he had improved and that he was not violent, homicidal, or destructive. But I was like,
Right.
wait, they discharged somebody who they said should be committed for life. But
It
it's
was
just,
too much effort.
yeah.
They literally just taught anyone that knew anything about what this guy was doing that if you escape enough, they'll throw in the towel and say, "Fuck it, let him be."
Yeah. But
The
it's
worst
just
he's
like,
done is splooge into the soup.
when I read they just got tired of getting him, so they discharged him,
Yeah, it's
and
probably
wrote
because
that
whoever tracked him down, he was dripping with burning anus and hey, maybe he had gonorrhea on his butthole.
well, yeah, probably. But what's interesting is they don't treat him. Like, I don't know if it's because he kept escaping and all that he never finished a treatment, but they diagnose him, or his blood test show sign or evidence of gonorrhea and syphilis, but he's not even in there a year. So it's just like, but during that year, he escaped several times. Now, in between his escapes, Earle actually got a job as a janitor at a hospital and even married one of the nurses. Her name,
Ah,
her name is Mary Martin. She's 58, 38 years older than him.
man, she was a lonely woman.
I'm just going to tell you a little bit about their marriage.
I don't want to
Now,
know.
during their marriage, Earle refused to bathe, had horrible
Of
Tabor
course,
manners, an
because he was
insatiable
eating off the floor.
an insatiable sexual appetite, and
Ugh.
and and bursts of violence.
Did she have to break out the chisel, decrust
No,
his penis in order to have sex? Because I
Earle
feel
would
like that's disgusting.
Earle would require sex every night with his new wife, and when she would be unwilling to participate, he would take matters into his own hands, quite literally,
Literally.
and openly masturbate next to her.
Did he
Now,
fling it on her like in Silence of the Lambs?
probably Mary, who was a
He's just like,
devout
have that
Mary,
splat.
you and your sound effects.
I'm
Mary, who was
sorry.
a
It's my way of mentally coping with the stuff that you want to throw at me. Get it?
oh, I got it. Mary was a devout Catholic who was raised to believe that masturbation was a sin and was disgusted by him. Now, at first, Earle would be affectionate with Mary, but that would soon turn into possessive jealousy. So if he saw her talking to another man, even if it was her brother, he would get angry and would violently attack inanimate objects.
He didn't attack people. He attacked. I mean, I feel like at least he's not being violent towards a human.
Yeah, at least he went and wrestled that lamp.
It's better than laying hands on her or her brother because I don't feel like that.
Yeah,
But at the
but
same time, if he saw, I couldn't imagine if Jason saw me talking to our brother that he
and
all of
he
a sudden
just
just walks over and starts like wrestling a table chair and he's like rolling around on the ground with the chair. I'd just be sitting there blinking, like, the heck is your problem?
yeah. No, and now it is nice that he didn't direct that violence at his wife. But
Or
mind
the
you,
men that she was talking to.
now Earle would still suffer from those terrible migraines that no medicine would ease.
Because it's
One
syphilis.
probably one came on while he was at work, which caused him to fall from a ladder and hit his head on the ground, causing him to go unconscious. He was
There's
hospitalized for 2 days, and
there's brain injury number 2.
he would begin experiencing hallucinations and hearing voices.
That's
He
the
al-
syphilis.
yeah, he also became more violent and paranoid towards his wife, and Mary
Still
began
the
to fear
syphilis.
him. Yeah. Now, Earl decided he wanted to move to another city, but Mary said she's not going to go. Her job's there, like her life's there. So Earl leaves without her. But
The best choice ever.
he returns the next day, begs her to
Oh,
go with him. She still refuses. This is only 6 years, or not 6 years, I'm sorry, 6 months into their marriage before they go their separate ways. Now, I will tell you, where they stop being husband and wife, like in the same city and all that, they're not divorced. They just go their separate ways.
they don't have kids, do they?
No, they were only living together as man and wife for 6 months before he just cuts back out, and then
Well, I don't know. He could have knocked her up with his dirty penis.
she's also 58.
Uh,
Now, after he leaves, he ends up attacking a 12-year-old girl and is locked up. Now, he's 21 when this happens, and it's on May 19th, 1919. Earl pretends to be a plumber that he'd been sent to go fix a gas leak, and
what?
I don't know.
Plumbers don't fix gas leaks.
Andrew, he's not a deep thinker, but it worked, and the 24-year-old son of Charles Summers lets him into the house to fix said gas leak. Earl goes into the basement where he finds 12-year-old Mary Summers playing, and he tries to sexually assault her. She fights back bravely and starts screaming, which naturally alerts her brother, who rushes down to her aid. Now, her brother sees Earl doing that, and Earl begins to flee. Mary's brother pursues him. Now, Earl and him start fighting in the street. Earl ends up landing a blow that knocks Charles Jr. to the ground, allowing Earl to disappear. Now, the police do catch up with him 2 hours later, like just right in the neighborhood, and arrest him. He's covered with many nasty scratches to his face, so way to go, little Mary.
Yeah, good girl.
On his first night in jail, Earl plucked his eyebrow hairs completely with his fingernails.
Okay.
And screamed about seeing faces in the walls. He
This
again.
poor man.
No.
Like, I almost feel sorry for him. Like, I realize he just attacked a 12-year-old, but this poor man needs so much help.
Yeah. Now, he's again committed to the Napa State Mental Hospital. Mind you, the same place he had previously escaped 3 times before. So I'm sure they're like, oh, God, he's back. Now, at this point, Earl is diagnosed with nomadic dementia and was not allowed to roam the grounds without a hospital official or restraints.
Because he escaped.
Now, during the first 2 weeks, he tries to escape twice, which, by the way, in case you didn't know, nomadic dementia is described as like a kind of dementia of feeling like you want to go home, but you're already there, but you're unable to recognize it. So it makes people agitated and, like, again, the feeling to wander. So that's where it's just like his restlessness.
To be fair, he's not home. He's in a mental institution. That's not home.
But anywhere when he gets that squirrely feeling of wanting to go somewhere.
He's a wanderer.
Yeah, but that's what they claim is why.
Because, and realistically, I'm going to say that it felt like nowhere was home because he was never really wanted anywhere.
Possibly. Now, at first, when he first starts the anti-syphilis drugs,
about time.
Earl begins to improve slightly, his first year being described as cooperative and capable of performing menial tasks and having normal conversations. But he still displays religious mania.
Well, that's his upbringing.
Now, to solve some of your questions about syphilis, it is easily cured with antibiotics when it's caught in early stages. But left untreated, syphilis can cause tumors, blindness, paralysis, damage to the nervous systems, brain, and other organs, and eventually...
And lifting chairs with your teeth.
and eventually kill you. I don't know what the time frame is for you to die of syphilis, though.
Well, and assuming that he's a otherwise healthy individual, I would assume that your immune system can try to fight things back so it's not full, you know what I mean? Like, and if he was getting bouts of antibiotics throughout any of this time but never finished them,
it's going back and forth.
Yeah, kind of like it dies down but never fully goes away, and then it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, staff begin to trust him because at this point, it's a year, he's behaving, so they allow him more access to certain areas unrestrained. He makes
Smart
it
decision.
18 months before becoming agitated, before attempting his escapes, before he finally succeeds. On November 2nd, 1923, he escapes and turns up at his Aunt Lillian's home in the middle of the night with his face pressed up against the window pane in a crazy state.
Sorry. It's not funny. That would scare the shit out of me, by the way.
Right? Can you imagine just like, what the fuck? Now,
I also picture it being an upstairs floor and he's just clinging to the
knows.
outside like a zombie in a movie where he's just shimmied on up the wall and he's just like, ah!
Yeah. Now, although Lillian is scared to death of him, she lets him in and gave him some of her husband's clothes and urges him to run away.
I would too.
As soon as he's gone, Lillian calls the police to let them know he had just been there. He's loose for 2 days before they find him and take him back to the mental hospital. Now,
Good for her.
After 16 months with no issues made into his record, he's released in 1925, 4 years almost to the day after he attacked Mary Summers. Now, Earle goes back to his wife Mary and begs her to take him back. She does, and it's just a matter of a few weeks before his nomadic dementia returns and he wanders off again. Now, this is also right when he starts his killing spree from 1926 to 1927, going on a rampage which leaves 22 known victims dead, all women, all boarding house landladies, all raped, and all strangled. You got no quibby things?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't because, okay, so has anybody checked his syphilis ratings here? Because I feel like
I don't
I've
know
been
if that's
saying
a
it from
thing.
the kick.
Your syphilis. What's your syphilis rating at?
Well, like checking his blood levels, because I'm going to guess it's full-fledged, back in action. His wife, has she been checked? Because I'm going to guess.
That's what I didn't get either. I was just like, if he had like forced some sort of sexual interaction almost every single day for 6 months, she had to have gotten it and then treated.
Maybe she did get treated. She's just like, you know what? I just had sex with my husband. I don't know if he has anything. He's just filthy. I need something.
I could still smell him on me, and I've showered 5 times.
I boiled my flesh to get his stench off, and it's still there. I don't understand also, when they put him back in the hospital, I realized that the military discharged him and said, yeah, we originally said he needs to be locked up for life, but we'll go ahead and let him go free now because he keeps escaping. Once he tried to attack someone, a young girl at that, why did they not make a better effort to lock him up? You know what I mean?
I don't know. I guess I thought it was weird that, okay, so you keep escaping, so they're just doing the whole fine, just let him go.
And he really didn't do anything to get locked up for life.
And
that's what they were ready to put him in for. And now that he's actually attacked someone, they're like, he doesn't need to be there forever.
yeah.
I just, so
that brings
that's what
us.
my brain's mulling over right now.
I know you still haven't gotten over the burning anus.
Well, that, and I pictured him in there doing, like, instead of push-ups, he's like on the ground lifting his bed.
Or plucking his eyebrows.
Oh, them bitches have been gone for a while. He's worked on them eyelashes now. He's done plucked all his body hair.
I was like, what? Every time I read something else that I was just like, this is so weird. Anyway, so that brings us to February 20th, 1926. A 55-year-old landlady was found strangled to death. Her name is Clara Newman. Now, Clara owned a rooming house and had a sign in her window advertising a vacancy. At 1:30 in the afternoon, a man came to inquire about the room, which happened to be in the attic. Martin, Clara's nephew, lived in the downstairs and saw the man enter, and Clara take him to the attic. They weren't gone long before the man came down alone and said to tell the landlady, "I'll be back in about an hour to rent that room." The man never returned. After an hour, Morton went to check on his Aunt Clara and found her lifeless body with a cord wrapped tightly around her neck. He called the police, who found no trace of the murderer.
I feel like it's the 20s. They don't know what they're looking for.
Yeah. Now, his second victim was in San Jose, California. Again, another landlady. Her husband finds her body on a bed in a vacant apartment, strangled with the silk belt from her dress. It was determined later that she had been raped after her death.
Ugh.
A month later, same scenario, 63-year-old boarding house owner murdered in a vacant room, and just like the others, she'd been strangled and then raped.
He likes the older ladies.
Yeah, so there were theories that since his wife was older, that it was him taking out his frustrations with her from their marriage, and even that goes back even more to maybe his grandmother, since that was his mother figure.
But he left his wife.
He did, but you know how, like, even with Bundy, of who they wouldn't touch the actual person who did anything or had their main frustrations, but they got to relive it by placing that on someone else.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, how can he be mad at his wife if he's the one that left? He wandered off.
She wouldn't go with him.
But then she took him back. So now what's he have to be mad about? He's the one that wandered off again.
Okay, well, anyway, so that's 3 murders in like the same relative area. Lillian, Laura, and Clara. Now the police believe that they're all by the same attacker, since it's like again, even the same type of victim, a landlady. They start calling him the Dark Strangler and the Gorilla Killer, because since every one of these has somebody witnessing him going and inquiring about the room and everything. So they've got a vague idea what he looks like, and it's just a man going to look for a room. Now that brings us to Miss Ollie Russell, a 53-year-old woman who ran a boarding house with her husband in Santa Barbara. Now, railroad worker William Farney was a boarder there and was asleep in his room on the top floor when he woke up to a loud banging from the room next to his. Annoyed by being awoke, he made his way to the door that separated his room from his noisy neighbor and bent down to peek inside the keyhole to see what was going on in there. Now, William, which I was like, no, he didn't. He's just being fucking nosy, because if you're pissed that somebody woke you up, you're going to bang on the door and tell him to quiet down.
Yeah.
But he peeps through the keyhole to see what's going on when he sees a large man, his pants pulled down around his knees, and was frantically making thrusting movements as his female partner lay beneath him. The banging was the headboard against the wall that had awoken him.
So this dirty perv is watching him
fuck a corpse,
rape or have sex with a corpse, and he's just sitting there probably on the other side of the keyhole beating it off, watching. Probably. Not realizing what he's watching.
Probably. Now, embarrassed, William withdrew, but then curiosity got the better of him and he leaned back down to take another peek. I can't believe this man admitted it to police, by the way. He noticed the man was wearing a shabby gray suit that looked really worn down, but the woman was dressed more upscale. When the man finished, he stood up, straightened his clothing, which gave William the opportunity to get a better look at the woman. Although her face was turned away, her clothing looked like it had been his landlady, Ollie Russell. Now, once the man finished dressing, put on his hat, and left the room, William heard the door to the hallway open and footsteps leading away from the room. The woman on the bed had not said a word or moved the slightest.
He's sitting there still peeking through the keyhole. I'm telling you, he's beating his meat while sitting there watching this dead woman lay there, probably sprawled out, not moving, and he's not done yet, which is why he hasn't done anything. Dirty ass pervert.
Probably. Looking closer, William saw what looked like blood on the bedding. He didn't believe Miss Russell was the kind of woman to be an adulterer and headed out to find Mr. Russell and report what he saw.
Yeah, I bet.
The two men returned and Mr. Russell unlocked the door to the unrented room to find Miss Russell, her battered face gruesomely discolored as she lay dead on the mattress. She had been strangled with a loop of cord that had been pulled tight enough to tear the flesh of her throat. Blood spattered from her neck onto the mattress, and there were bloody marks on the casing of the door.
The casing of the door? Is that like the door
Like
frame?
the frame, that's what I figure.
Huh.
Now, that brings us to August. Stephen Nesbitt comes home to find his 50-year-old wife is missing. He doesn't think she could have gone far. Dinner fixings had been laid out and were in mid-prep. She'd also left her purse in the bedroom, making it look like she just stepped out for a quick second. After a few hours, Mr. Nesbitt is frantic and asks neighbors to help look for her. Now, boarding house operators at this point, just like the Nesbitts, were all aware of the recent landlady deaths, which only fueled Mr. Nesbitt's worry. He decided to check the empty apartment they had listed for rent on the second floor of their home. Then he found, crammed into the bathroom, Miss Nesbitt, ravaged and dead. She had been suffocated by a dish towel. Her head had been slammed into the tile of the bathroom with such force that it had broken her teeth, which were strewn around the small room. Blood was everywhere, smeared and splattered on every surface. So Earle had strangled her with such rage that he actually tore the dish towel that was still tied around her neck like a scarf.
Good Lord.
Now, murders would stop in California and pick back up in Portland, Oregon, which is why I said that earlier, if you remember, that his murdering spree goes on as long as he does because he travels so much and it makes it hard for them to keep up with where he's at. But on October 19th, Betta Withers is strangled and raped, and her body is stuffed into a trunk that's later found by her 15-year-old son.
Oh.
Then 59-year-old Virginia Grant is killed in the same way the next day, and her body stuffed behind the furnace in her basement. Again, raped after death and also robbed. Which he would steal from them and then hawk jewelry, which is also helping him travel and move around. Now, the day after Virginia is murdered, Maybelle Fluke is murdered and found in the attic of her boarding house. So if you're keeping track, that's 3 in a row in Oregon. Now, he leaves Oregon and heads back to California, where they pick up in San Francisco, and Anna Edmonds, a 56-year-old woman, is strangled with a rag and raped in her home on November 18th. The day after that, Miss H.S. Murray is attacked. She's 8 months pregnant.
Does he kill her?
The man that came in to look at the room she had for rent, he came in about 6 p.m., attacked her almost immediately upon entering her home. She screamed and fought back, which caused the neighbors to come running. She managed to scratch his face and hands, but he fled. Her survival caused him to move on to Seattle. So he moved again, and then attacks.
Did he successfully rape her?
No, because she was screaming and fighting so much.
How old was she?
She was not older.
So I'm wondering if that's also why he was going after the older women.
Yeah, the youngins were too.
The 12-year-old was able to fight him off, and now he branched out to a younger woman, and she was also.
The key is to scratch and scream.
Yeah, don't give up.
Now, on November 23rd, this is still within the same week of the other 3 that were killed, Florence Monks is attacked and murdered in Seattle, and her home was ransacked, and over $10,000 in jewelry went missing.
That's a lot of money for back then.
Yeah. Only 6 days after Florence, another woman is found strangled in her home, also had rooms for rent. She too was raped after death, and her body was placed on the bed. This time, the police found fingerprints on her wrought iron bedpost. Now, by the end of 1925, Earle had killed 14 women and an 8-month-old baby that he had throttled with a diaper.
What? What the fuck, Claire?
Sorry.
Also in the goddamn triggers is a murder of an infant. Stop laughing, you sick individual.
Sorry.
Stop laughing.
No. Again, that he
twisted.
was earning money from random odd jobs and again from stealing from
He
his
was not.
victims.
He was stealing from victims. He did
Now,
not work. He
sometimes
worked on his penis.
sometimes Earle left women alive and had made some positive impressions on elderly landladies that he stayed with. They would recall that he was pleasant, quiet, and usually studying his Bible when they saw him. He would typically leave suddenly without paying his bill, though. Which I was like, how is that a positive impression? He didn't pay his bill.
They enjoyed his thrusting. The ones that resisted are the ones he killed.
Now, back in Portland, Edna Gaylord operated a rooming house. One of her tenants, Sophie Yates, came forward regarding a shabby dressed man that came into the rooming house around 10 a.m. and introduced himself as Adrian Harris. He rented the room sight unseen, and the three chatted. Adrian even purchased Thanksgiving dinner for them when he found out Edna couldn't afford one herself. He also paid the week's rent, but vacated 2 days early, even though he was all paid up. When he left, he gifted the ladies several pieces of jewelry. They went straight to the police with them, and it was determined they were Florence Monk's stolen items.
Why did they go to the police with him?
I think it was rather suspicious that he gave them pricey jewelry and he left before his bill was paid. That it probably was one of those, he's shabby dressed, he leaves quickly. I mean, it's suspicious. I imagine if they would have gone to the police and the police were like, I don't know, nobody's reported these stolen, they probably would have been like, But since my guess would be if it's $10,000 worth of jewelry that disappear, they were probably family heirlooms that made them easy to identify.
Yeah.
Now, Earle would head eastward, first to Iowa, then to Kansas City, then Philadelphia, where he strangled a 60-year-old woman. Then he hit Buffalo, New York, Detroit, and finally to Chicago. He's now up to killing 20 women with his bare hands, a towel, or a rope. He gets bored with the United States and decides he's going to cross into Canada from Minnesota and head towards Winnipeg. His first stop was a secondhand clothing store where he traded his fancy clothes for workman's clothes and $1 in cash. He then charmed his way into Catherine Hill's boarding house. Now, this is where Nelson will be arrested twice in Canada, where also his murder spree will end. Now, he's first arrested on June 15th, 1927 in Manitoba, not long after murdering 2 women in Canada. Now, your trigger warning, it's going to be a 14-year-old girl, Andrea.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a 14-year-old girl of Lola Cowan found decomposing in the room he rented from Miss Hill. So apparently after he murdered little Lola, Earle slept with her body for 3 nights under the bed, despite the fact that he had mutilated her body similar to that of Jack the Ripper.
Ew, what the heck?
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
Yes. So the second victim in Canada was housewife Emily Patterson. Her husband William arrived home to find his wife missing and discovered a suitcase pillaged and money stolen from it. So William calls the police, naturally. Now, William was a religious man, anxious about his missing wife, so he decided to kneel down and pray next to his bed for strength when he discovers her body.
What's with him and under the bed in Canada?
Maybe he slept on the floor, so he's like, look at this, all this storage space.
It's weird.
He's weird. She'd been raped and bludgeoned to death before being shoved under her own bed. Now, police estimated her time of death to be around 11 a.m. that morning. Now, after Earle did everything with poor Miss Patterson, he had gone and hawked some items he'd stole from them and then went to the hairdressers for a quick shave. Now, it was calculated that Miss Patterson had been killed at 11 in the morning. And then after he got his shave, he went to a secondhand clothes shop where he sold items stolen from the Pattersons. Then he visited a hairdresser for that shave where the barber noticed blood on Nelson's hair.
I thought he didn't like being clean. Since when is he getting shaved? I pictured him to look like a scruffy,
So they
filthy.
He usually did. So Apparently he would time his crimes so he would look different. So if he committed something while he was clean shaven and nice and purdy, then he would let himself go shabby, and then from the shabbiness of when somebody saw him like that, he'd go to being dressed different. So his little aliases, which is part of what made it hard for them to track him, because the descriptions were different.
Yeah.
And then you also figure he traveled all over the place, so it's not like he was in one area. And bearing in mind, there weren't cell phones or anything.
Yeah. Difficult to communicate between the different areas.
Yeah. Now, Winnipeg is on fire with the news of Emily Patterson's death. They wasted no time connecting the murders to the ones that they'd heard of in the U.S. to assuming the same man had come to their town. They began a sweep of all the rooming houses in the city when they came to Catherine Hill's boarding house. Now, Catherine cooperated and allowed the police access to search for their man, but found it hard to believe that the good, kind Christian man she'd been renting to would be the man they were looking for. And she also told him she had no issues with any of her tenants and nobody had reported anything to her. So the police leave. Now, Catherine, curious, goes up to Earl's room and knocks. After no response, she lets herself in. Now, the room smells of decay, and she is quoted saying it smelled like somebody left meat out, and it went bad.
Wait, I thought the police were there. If she gave them access, they didn't go.
So she let the police in, and they did they didn't go room to room in the sense of they didn't unlock all the doors and force everybody to search. They kind of went in and was just like, have you seen somebody that fits this description? But she says no, because she finds it hard to believe that that's who they're looking for. She's a stupid, stupid lady.
Does she live?
Now, the room smells of decay.
I like how you ignored my question.
And the bed had not been slept in. She also notes that the towels she provides tenants had not been used. So she thought that was weird. But Catherine thought that Earle had just skipped out on his bill. So she goes to call the police because she thinks that's the issue. Now, Mr. Hill decides to head over to notify the police. And while he's going down the stairs, another boarder is headed up and just happens to catch a glimpse in the doorway and notices at the right angle into Earl's room that it looks like there's a mannequin or a doll under the bed. Now, this is when they find the body of the missing 14-year-old girl, Lola Cowan. She'd been strangled and raped like so many others before her.
Okay, so not to get graphic here, but if she was mutilated like Jack the Ripper's victims, how did he clean that mess up? How is there not a mess everywhere?
I have no idea.
Because I would have assumed the towels would have been what he used to sop up all the blood and everything. But if it looks like the bed is clean and hasn't been slept in and the towels haven't been touched, how did he manage to kill and basically gut this 14-year-old and not make a mess?
My guess would be he didn't kill her there, that he just brought her back to snuggle with her under the bed.
Wait, he snuggled under the bed?
Yes. That she was under there for 3 days.
I get that she was under there. I didn't know that he was under there with her.
That's why the bed wasn't slept in, because he would sleep under the bed.
God, this guy's weird.
That's why I'm saying when they make the comment of this is when he started to show signs of mental disorders. No, sir. It was way before then.
Way before then.
Now, the Hills, along with other boarders, were able to provide a detailed description of Earle to the police. So when Earle decides 2 days later that it's time to head back to the United States, he doesn't realize that not only is the entire Royal Canadian Mounted Police Force looking for him, but so is every other law-abiding, peace-loving citizen who wants him dead for what he's done to Lola, and also the rewards for him being found aren't helping his case either. So everybody's got a good idea who they're looking for and are looking. Now, as a foreigner, Earle was unfamiliar with the customs and traits of Winnipeg. Although similar to the US, there were things that set him apart from other people and would make it easy for people to tell if he was lying about, why he was there, what he was doing. And it would also make him memorable to the people who interacted with him. Now, Earle would hitch rides with people saying that he was headed to the border and that he had just been working on a ranch in Winnipeg. But no Canadian would call a spread of land that far west a ranch. They were all farms in that area. So people thought it was weird that he would say it was whatever ranch he would make up. So it's fortunate he went to a different country and stuck out. Because when the police would go around trying to figure out where he is, people would remember Earle. And that made it easy for them to track his movement and predict whereabouts he would be next. Now, all the border towns at this point were notified to be on the lookout for Earle, and he's still not realizing the police had a description of him. Earle walks into a post office where he's recognized, and the police are notified. Now, at this point, he's only 5 miles from being in the United States. He makes another stop at a general store to buy food when the store owner recognizes him and alerts the law. He also knows that there's a $1,500 reward for his capture. Now, the local constable catches up with Earle, who is headed along the southbound railroad tracks. He draws his revolver, and Earle immediately surrenders and is arrested. Now, Earle is taken to the local jail where he gives the alias Virgil Wilson. He claims to be a day worker and didn't know anything about the guerrilla killer, and that he was a God-fearing man. Now, Earle was placed in a century-old cell without shoes, socks, and a belt, which was usual for Canada. Earle complied with every request and was very polite, so the jailer locked the cell door, not thinking anything of it, leaves Earle lying down on the straw-filled mattress on the iron bed that's like hanging or mounted to the wall. The jailer leaves, believing Earle's locked up safe and sound, and goes to send a telegraph to Winnipeg that they've captured him, because they still believe they've got the right guy. Even if he's... do. Yeah, they do. So at least they didn't go we got the wrong guy and set him loose. But when he gets back, Earle's gone. He had managed to locate a wire and pick the lock to his cell and escape unseen. The constable forms a posse to find the guerrilla killer. Although Earle was quick with his escape, he still has no shoes, socks, or a belt, but he manages to find an old barn for the night where he sleeps and finds clothes there to change into and continues on south.
Which, by the way, I'm totally picturing a scruffy, filthy man running and his pants are dropping down because they're like, in my mind, 5 sizes too big. So he's busy running barefoot, trying to hold his drawers up.
I can't believe for somebody who's not a smart person, how easy he is to outwit people.
It doesn't say much for everybody else.
It doesn't. But when he's in the barn, he finds old hockey stuff. He ends up taking ice skates and making them into shoes. He snaps off the blades or whatever he does. But it's funny because he ends up hopping a train, but he doesn't realize the train he hops is transporting members of the Winnipeg Police Department. And he's recaptured that morning, which I was like, that's the best. Now, when they arrest him, he ends up making a weird statement that he said.
I can't imagine what it could be.
This is the only quote.
Is it along the burning anus statement? Because I feel like nothing but weird has come out of this man.
The only thing he says is, I only do my lady killings on Saturday nights.
What?
Exactly. So it's like, what? I guess he thought that would be the excuse of he didn't kill them. He's innocent. He only kills his ladies on Saturdays, and this is clearly a Wednesday.
That was his alibi, is that he only kills them on Saturdays? Let me ask you a question. Did they die every other day of the week except on a Saturday?
Probably so.
And he's like, nah, I do all my lady killing on Saturday. Or maybe he meant making the ladies swoon over his filthy, unwashed ass. I
don't know, but I just thought it was some weird shit to proclaim.
I don't think he meant it in like a murdering kind of context.
I don't think so.
I think he means like he's out killing it with the ladies on Saturday night, not killing.
Yeah. But his 4-day trial begins on November 1st, 1927, in courtroom number 1 of the Manitoba Law Courts building. Now,
Did they make him bathe first, or did they like his manly musk?
Probably not. More than 40 people came forward to identify Earle as the person they saw. The most damning witness was Miss Catherine Hill, who identified Earle as the man who rented the room where the body of Lola Cowan was found. It was determined that Earle would get a shave and a haircut shortly before killing, then would let his appearance grow shaggy until the need to murder became unbearable. One victim in Detroit had been killed with an electrical cord. I don't know if you remember that first lady.
Mm-hmm.
But the electrical cord had been cut with a knife while it was still plugged in. That he cut the cord in order to commit the crime with the cord. Now, the police predicted that that same knife would have had electric burns on it since he cut through a live wire. Now, this knife was still in Earle's possession when he was captured, and it did, in fact, have electric burns on it.
Which I know this has nothing to do with the case, but there was one time when...
At band camp?
My second oldest was, I don't know, like 6. He got a hold of a pair of scissors, and there was a fish tank that I had set up in the hallway, and he cut through the cord to the light. And
Did it burn?
It burned a chunk of metal out of the scissors and set part of the carpet on fire.
Huh. So you know what it'd look like then?
Sure do. I think I still have the scissors somewhere.
But so it was pretty damning for him to still have the knife with, what are the odds that somebody has a knife with electric burns in it? Now, his wife would also come forward and testify, stating he wasn't home when the killings took place, and also of his weird behaviors while she was married to him. Now, Earle's Aunt Lillian would also testify of the bizarre tendencies he had, and that although she feared him, he was more of a child with fits of rage, followed by depression and manic behaviors. And Earle's lawyers attempted to portray Nelson as mentally ill and therefore not responsible for his crimes, to which I did the whole portray him as mentally ill. Yeah, I don't think it's that hard to say he's not screwed tight.
Okay, so this is where, and even nowadays, my brain gets kind of hung up on things, is, okay, so while he is, without a doubt, mentally ill, like, I feel like anybody that wants to argue that needs to have their brains checked out, because this guy's batshit crazy. However, he is aware of what he's doing, because the fact that he's able to alter his appearance and it shows that he knows what he's doing is wrong. Does that make sense? Like, well, he might be crazy, but
I'm happy to tell you then, Earle was found to be legally sane.
They're batshit crazy too.
After an hour of deliberation, the jury found Earle guilty of the Winnipeg slaying of Emily Patterson, who was found strangled under her bed and found by her husband, that lady.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also found guilty of killing Lola. Now, Earle would stare blankly as the judge sentenced him to death. Earle would try to appeal his sentence and claim he was innocent. The courts disagreed with him, saying, you did it. This is an open and shut. They're pretty sure about this one, and they're going to speed things along. And just 60 days after his trial, January 13th, 1928, Earle is hanged by the neck at Vaughan Street Jail in Winnipeg. Personally find it ironic that he was strangled to death, much like his victims.
Yeah, it's a eye for an eye.
It's a strangulation for a strangulation.
Do as to others as you'd have them do unto you.
But that is Earle Farrell Wilson, whatever he wants to go by. Nelson, Wilson, Virgil. That's that weirdo that I told you about for a while.
That you told me you couldn't tell me because you had something real fun and you wanted me to be utterly shocked with
You
your.
can't say that it wasn't like that. That's so much information that is unique. And I couldn't have. When I was reading it, I only found it interesting when I found out when at a young age he would lift chairs and heavy objects with his teeth to show off. That's what made me want to do this one. And then when I was like, "What the fuck am I reading?" I would just look. I would tell Dave just random snippets of it because it was just one of those. I didn't want to tell you and give it away.
So you had to tell somebody.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell anybody about the burning anus because we had guests. Turns out that's not a party story.
You didn't use that at your dinner party? See, I told you got dinner parties.
It was Thanksgiving.
It's still a dinner party. Slow your ass down because I was going to make fun of their last name.
Mrs. Nesbit.
Yes, and from Toy Story, when Buzz gets the apron put on and his arm's missing, he says that his name's Mrs. Nesbit. So this whole time,
you've wanted to make fun of Mrs. Nesbit, and she's got her brains smashed onto the floor and her teeth strewn about the room.
Well, I just wanted to comment that somehow we always relate back to a TV show or a movie. I can't help it if they use the same name.
Mrs. Nesbit.
This case is fucking weird, by the way.
I told you that when I was like, what? And then I'd scroll more and I'd go, what? I don't even understand how. I don't understand how. I would remember if I had heard of somebody who all like this sounds.
Who got out of the military because they had burning anus.
I will say.
Or went around picking furniture up with their teeth.
Yeah, well, so when I read that one.
Or got out of a mental hospital where they were put in there for life because they gave up because he kept escaping. So they're like, he's not a threat.
Pretty much.
And then once he actually attacks someone, they're like, 4 years is good.
Yeah. But this was the one that I was working on. And then I stopped to do that Felix Hall one. And I was like, this one's even longer. And I was like, these ones that there's just so much. But it's uniquely so much.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's definitely
unique,
to say the least.
Because I only picked some of the cases where he killed them, and it was like Miss Nesbit is the only one who is so beat up. Like she's the most beaten up out of everybody with like her teeth are all over the place.
I'm gonna guess she fought real hard.
I think when he tried to strangle her with the dish towel, it was probably a lot harder to strangle her. So she's fighting, and he probably was behind her and then just smashed her face into the floor.
Poor lady. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mind-fucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.